Those additional $600 unemployment checks expired last week. Do you know what your options are now? What about eviction and mortgage protections? Did those expire too? Will there be another $1,200 stimulus check that goes out to Americans? These are great questions that require urgent answers. In fact, there are so many questions out there right now regarding the economy and what's going to happen now that some of the CARES Act protections expired, and we do have some information and some answers for you today. Hello everyone, and welcome to another live episode of Ask Abby. My name is Abby, and it's my goal to do the digging and provide some questions to those pressing financial questions. And boy, do we have a big topic for you today. Those $600 checks that many Americans were receiving to help out during this pandemic expired last week. So while the country is not yet recovered from the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, some of the protections are already expiring. And so what do you do if you were depending on those checks to make your bill payments and put food on the table? I'm here to provide some answers to those questions and some advice to get you through these coming weeks. So first things first, let's talk about what the CARES Act is and what's actually expiring. So the CARES Act was signed on March 17th, and it provided a number of things to stimulate the economy within its $2.2 trillion write-up, one of which was that initial $1,200 check that many Americans received in April, right? Another was the mortgage and eviction protections for people in federally backed housing. Another, and the one that we're talking about today primarily, is the unemployment benefits that provided furloughed and laid off employees with an extra $600 a week on top of their state's already existing unemployment benefits. So this is a big topic this week, and there are a ton of questions out there, so let's get those questions rolling in the comment bar. I will keep an eye out for those, and we are here to answer your questions. I've had some people ask me questions via Facebook Messenger too, so I do monitor those and I work really hard to make sure that we get the questions answered for you. Let me just pull up the show so that I can make sure I can put all of our links in there for you. All right, so the first question that we're going to answer today is, will you receive any unemployment benefits? The answer to that, in short, is yes. So there's some good news here. The CARES Act not only provided that $600 a week additional on top of your state's benefits, but it also added some time. The bill adds 13 weeks of coverage. So if you're about to run out, you might still have some extra time on top of that. Most states offer 26 weeks of unemployment, so that means in those cases, if you're in a state that offers 26 weeks, you will have 39 weeks of unemployment in those states. So depending on when you started receiving benefits, you might still have some time left. It doesn't extend that extra $600 a month. That's still expired. So I know a lot of us are saying, well, it's not enough. My state's unemployment benefits alone are not enough to cover all of the expenses. In fact, the average state payout is only $370 per week, and the CARES Act stimulus made that $970 per week. That's huge. That's a huge difference, and more than 25 million people were depending on that. So we still have to talk about potential extensions of that $600 a week, and we'll get there, but there's no extension yet. So what do you do if your state's benefits are not enough? We did a show back in May to talk about some of the great ways you can increase your cash flow and some not so great ways if you're in a pinch and you need to find cash fast. So if you're short on funds because of this expiration and of extra unemployment benefits, watch this video that I'll put in the comment bar for you now. And we talk a lot about some ways to find cash quickly. So check out that video. Just to summarize though, a few things that you should try your best to avoid right now if you're in a cash pinch. And that's cash advances and payday loans. Why? Because those fees and terms are not in your best interest. And in that video, we talk about some things that can truly help you get cash fast. So check it out. Start at the 11-minute mark on that video. That's when we kind of dive into some things that you can do. The first part, I just talk about things you shouldn't do, and summarizing, that's cash advances and payday loans. So start at that 11-minute mark in that video. Another thing to look into is if you're eligible for food and cash assistance on a federal and state level. So like things like food stamps. If you're eligible for that, now's the time to take advantage of it, because there is going to be a bit of a delay before any sort of other financial assistance comes out in a similar CARES Act sort of way. So check out your state and federal benefits for things like food and cash assistance sooner than later. If you're trying to plan for the next week or so and you're not exactly sure if you've already received that last $600 check or if it's still coming, I will put a link or a picture in the comment bar that shows you a graph of exactly when that's coming. It is from Investopedia, and they have a great graphic for you. So I'm going to put that in the comment bar. I'm actually going to put the link that has the chart in it so that you can go check out that article as well. It is definitely worth a look. If you're not sure if you've already received that last check, check it out. So when it comes to paying your bills, putting food on the table, and keeping a roof over your head, we need to talk about one thing, and that's your rent and your mortgage payment. That's the first payment that a lot of people tend to try to defer or skip if it comes down to that. So the first thing to note is that there was an eviction moratorium that protected people in housing that was backed by, that had a federally backed mortgage. So that also expired last week. After that, your landlord can issue a notice to evict, but it can't actually remove tenants from their homes for another 30 days. A month ago, we did a show that answered the question, can I be evicted during the pandemic? Now, even though these moratoriums expired, we discussed a lot of what to do if you can't make your mortgage or rent payment, and what your rights are as a tenant, and how that whole eviction process works. So if you're wondering about that and you're just not sure where the next step for all that would be, check out that video. There's a lot of details in it. I've had a lot of questions about eviction and tenant rights, and we talk about that in this video, so check it out. Now, the big question, let's talk about if there's more relief coming. Is there another CARES Act? Is the government going to renew any of the relief programs that were in the CARES Act that have now expired? The answer to that is, well, probably, right? So there's a new bill proposal that was released on Monday. It's called the HEALS Act, HEALS. It stands for Health, Economic Assistance, Liability, and Schools. So the Associated Press said in that proposal, there's talk of $200 a week supplemental employment to replace that $600 check. So what they're doing is they're trying to replace that $600 check with the amount that people probably need. So if this bill goes through, if it passes, you will get an additional $600 a week through September, and then after that, you will receive up to $500 additional, but no more than 70% of your income. So you can receive up to $500 to replace that $600 check, but not if it accounts for over 70% of your income. So in this bill, in the HEALS Act, there's also talk of some of other types of aid, including aid for schools, an extension of the payroll protection program, and additional tax credits for companies who keep people on their payroll and hire new people, so good incentive there. COVID testing, there's funds for COVID testing, extra student loan relief for those who don't have an income, and then finally, a second round of stimulus checks for Americans to help drive the economy. So, big question, right? Are you gonna get another stimulus check? If this HEALS Act passes, the answer to that is yes. Similar to in the CARES Act, where people received $1,200, Americans who earned less than $75,000, it's the same. Essentially, if you earn less than $75,000 a year, you will get a $1,200 check. It doubles if you are married and you file your taxes jointly. So if your joint adjusted gross income is less than $150,000, you'll get a $2,400 check. The only difference that's in the HEALS Act versus the CARES Act is actually in favor of the consumer, and that is that people will get an additional $500 for each dependent, and there's no age restriction. In the CARES Act, there was an age restriction so that people with dependents who were over the age of 17 didn't get that additional funding, and that's not the case. So you'll get an extra $500 a month for every dependent, regardless of their age. So that's really good news. And just like in the last one, for every the amount of your check will decrease by 5% of your income above that amount. So above that $75,000, or if you file jointly, $150,000. So that's great news. That's coming in the HEALS Act. Finally, the question to all of this is, right, that sounds pretty good. It helps alleviate some of the stress, especially as some of these protections expire. But what's the timeline for all this? When is all this going to go through? So Congress has until August 7th. That's next week, in a week from now. So they have till August 7th to reach a deal. From there, the president has to sign it. So that if the deal's finalized, a second round of checks could come as early as like the end of August. In August, you could have a second round of checks, plus that additional unemployment benefit that expired, that $200 extra on top of your state's benefits would go into effect. Here's something to note though. If Congress doesn't come to an agreement by next week, by August 7th, they're technically going to be in recess until September. They could extend that recess a little bit, to come to an agreement, figure something out. But as of right now, if there's a delay, it could be until September until something like the HEALS Act is approved. The thing is that the next couple of weeks are really big weeks all across the country, right? Whether or not this HEALS Act is going to pass, what people can do if they're in a pinch with cash because of that extra unemployment expired. What are your options? I'm gonna make sure I stay as up to date as possible on all of these topics. It's really hard to stay up to date on your own, and with everybody so busy, I'm going to commit to staying up to date for you. So if you have questions along the way, thank you, Anna. If you have questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask me. You can message me. If you have questions about this, feel free to throw them in the comment bar. You can also send me a Facebook message, or you can email me directly at askabby@creditanddebt.org. So if you're facing trouble with your debt right now, please also remember that while I'm here for you, we also have coaches who are here for you, and our coaching sessions are free. There's no obligation, there's no judgments, there's no stress. So they can give you direction on where to go with your finances. If you have debt that you need resolved, they can point you in the right direction there too. If you would, please share this post. There are 25 million Americans looking for answers to the unemployment question, on top of all the people who are still curious about what happens now that the CARES Act protections have expired, and will there be another stimulus bill? So there's a ton of people with these questions. It's not always so easy to navigate the news headlines that are coming our way in this COVID-19 world. So make sure you share this video. Give me a quick thumbs up if you can, because these are big questions. And like I said, I'll be giving you updates on these topics as soon as I can. So if you follow our page, you'll get updates when we have more news for you. Thank you again for watching the show, and please don't forget to tune in to our show every Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific. We will see you soon. Bye.